everyone. Welcome to the Lee and Low Books Fall 2024 Book Buzz. My name is Shaughnessy Miller. I'm the Assistant Marketing Manager at Lee and Low, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm excited to share what's new in picture books and novels from the largest multicultural independent children's book publisher in the U.S. So before I dive into our fall titles, I just want to shout out a spring 2024 title, Watt Takes His Shot, the life and legacy of basketball hero Wataru Misaka. This high-energy biography celebrates Watt Misaka, the first non-white player or person to play in the NBA. Be sure to stop by the Pop Top stage today from 2:30 to 3:20 for a panel with the author Cheryl Kim, as she discusses how to use picture book biographies to develop empathy and promote well-being with authors Maria Isabel Vergara Sanchez and Aida Salazar. You won't want to miss their discussion. Oops. As you can see from the titles on display, our books are about everyone and for everyone. Copies of our 2024 catalog are spread out among the tables and seating. You can also find our catalogs and digital review copies on Edelweiss, and follow Lee and Low on your favorite social media, including Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, and TikTok. And bookmark leeandlow.com, where you can find free resources to use with our books in classrooms and libraries. Make sure to check out the results of the third iteration of our diversity baseline survey. This data set measures the demographics of the publishing workforce, and it's key to understanding the issue of representation in books. And with that, let's get started. So Mercedes Sosa, Voice of the People, and the simultaneous Spanish hardcover edition, Mercedes Sosa, La Voz del Pueblo, written and illustrated by Aisha Perez Prado, is a powerful picture book biography of one of Latin America's most beloved singers and human rights advocates. Affectionately known both as the voice of the voiceless and La Negra, Mercedes used her musical talents and powerful voice to speak out against poverty and inequality in her home country. Readers will learn of Mercedes' personal journey from humble beginnings to global singing sensation, as well as Argentine history of how economic and political instability led to the rise of a dictatorship and state-sponsored terrorism. This story emphasizes the importance of allowing music and art to freely criticize a government and inspire social change. And Afterward with Photos dives deeper into Mercedes' life. Author-illustrator Aisha Perez Prado did extensive research about Mercedes and even had the opportunity to interview her brother and nephew about many of the different parts of Mercedes' story. Aisha grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She is an educator of linguistic and cultural studies whose academic work and children's books promote diversity, peace, and social activism. Of the book, Aisha says it shows how all people, regardless of wealth, gender, ethnicity, or other circumstances, have the right to live in freedom and peace with hope for a better future. All voices are equally valuable and should be heard. Mercedes will sing her way into your hearts on September 17th, just in time for Latina and Hispanic Heritage Month. From New Voices Award winner and debut picture book author Maham Khawaja comes The Home We Make, illustrated by the acclaimed Gabi Zainab Faidi. The Home We Make is a moving story told from the perspective of a young refugee girl as she and her family are forced to flee their beloved home after violence erupts all around them. Emotive illustrations by Faidi balance the family's love for one another and hope for the future with the harrowing journey to escape on foot, travel by boat, and then finally resettle in a safe place. Through it all, the young girl tries to hold on to all the pieces of her life before and find a way to rebuild a sense of home. The Home We Make is a timely and tender look at the ongoing refugee crisis and how it affects the children forced to endure these tragic circumstances. It serves as a valuable resource for parents, educators, and librarians looking to educate children about the plight of asylum seekers and foster empathy and understanding. Positioning home as not a physical space, but something that is tied to memories, traditions, and the people we love. When asked about her authorial debut, Maham said, I knew I wanted to tell a hopeful story. In the refugee crisis the world is currently facing and has been facing, there have been many helpers, countless kind-hearted souls who brought a bit of respite to the difficult journeys refugees have been forced to take. I wanted to show a realistic best-case scenario, a scenario in which, yes, a family has to uproot and leave their homeland, but also a scenario in which they are treated with kindness and welcomed by others, and a scenario in which they are able to rebuild and begin to heal. The Home We Make releases on October 8th. A Two-Placed Heart is a heartfelt middle grade novel in verse by Danfung Nguyen, the author of Meo and Bea. It's the summer of 1996. 12-year-old Bum can't believe her younger sister doesn't see herself as Vietnamese, only American. She says she doesn't remember Vietnam or their lives there, their family there, their house and friends. But how could her sister forget the terrible journey through Saigon and the airplanes and everything? And what about Bum? She remembers now, but how long will she keep her memories? She always found comfort in the sound of her father's typewriter. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. So she has an idea. She'll write down all that she can remember, the time when her father was a spy, when her mother was nicknamed a radio, when they were hungry, so hungry Bum couldn't walk well, when the family all said goodbye. And Mom will even tell her sister about herself, about what it's like moving to Tennessee, the ESL classes, bullies, strange new foods, icy weather, friendships and crushes, and how her family worked to keep their heritage alive. She'll type one poem at a time until they'll never forget again. Danfung's love for Vietnam and her culture shines through the pages and centers the narrative of the aftermath of the Vietnam War on Vietnamese immigrants. It's an intimate story about the beauty of family and being torn between two worlds, something many BIPOC readers can relate to, and it's especially true for immigrant kids starting at a new school in a new place and not speaking the same language as everyone else, as well as the internal struggle when someone begins to lose their native language. A Two-Placed Heart shows its readers that the love for one sister and the cultures that connect them can be both complex and beautiful. And here's the latest installment to our middle grade graphic novel series, Tales of the Feathered Serpent, written by David Bowles and illustrated by his daughter, Charlene Bowles. In The Hero Twins and the Magic of Song, two demigod twins are destined to rescue their father and uncle from the land of the dead. But it won't be easy. They'll have to use some trickster magic to survive their cruel half-brothers. Each book in the Tales of the Feathered Serpent series features a standalone adaptation to one of several pre-Columbian Mesoamerican tales that were first combined in David Bowles' YA story collection, Feathered Serpent, Dark Heart of Sky. The first book in the series, Rise of the Halfling King, received a starred review from Kirkus and was included in their best middle grade graphic novel list in 2020. Sharing these sacred Mayan and Aztec tales to new readers is important, and doing them with graphic novels is not only fun for its readers, it has a deeper history. David Bowles said, "When I consider the highly visual way Mesoamericans recorded their stories, the closest modern equivalent that comes to mind is the graphic novel. Blending words and images, comics, and other sorts of graphics allows our brains to process stories more like our ancestors did, using multiple parts of our brains to understand more fully." Okay, and now I'm proud to invite authors Olivia Abtahi and Isabel Quintero to the stage. While they're making their way to their seats, I just want to share a little bit about them. So Olivia Abtahi is a melting pot of distinct Iranian and Argentine cultures. Her debut novel, Perfectly Parveen, received numerous honors and starred reviews. She's the winner of the New Visions Award for her novel, Twin Flames. Oh, there we go. And then it's been 10 years since William C. Morris YA debut award-winning author Isabel Quintero introduced us to Gabi Hernandez. Gabi, A Girl in Pieces continues to resonate with young people today because it realistically depicts the myriad of struggles teenagers face, body image issues, drug addiction, sexual assault, homophobia, the overall condemnation of expressing sexuality, and many more. So we're going to dive into our conversation. Olivia, let's start with you. Tell us about your YA fantasy, Twin Flames, and your inspiration for approaching the story from the perspective of twins.
Hi, everyone. I decided to write Twin Flames because I had just moved to Denver, Colorado from California, and I was so lonely. I did not know anyone. And so when I set out to write Twin Flames, I thought, why don't I have twins in the story, because it's like they have a built-in best friend. And while in the story, uh, they kind of become best friends. They're not very friendly in the beginning. It was really fun for me in my lonely Denver years before I knew nobody to just like make this world where I felt comfortable and I could have all the dialogues I wish I was having with people I hadn't met yet. But Twin Flames follows the story of twins Bianca and Leila Mazanderani. They are Iranian and Argentinian like me. And at the beginning, they're a little prickly towards each other. Bianca is kind of the goth, like, outcast of their high school, while Layla loves to kind of be with the in crowd, and Layla kind of shoves her heritage like deep down and doesn't like to talk about it, while Bianca's very proud of it. And so when a mysterious force comes to their town, Bianca and Layla have to band together to try to fight this demon off. So a lot of action, adventure, and sibling love.
And Isabel, for those who aren't familiar, after 10 years, could you introduce the story of Gabi, A Girl in Pieces?
Yes, good afternoon. So Gabi is a senior in high school. She is a light-skinned Chicana fat girl who is trying to find her voice, trying to figure out what it means to be a woman, while her mom has very strict ideas of what it means to be a woman, and her dad is addicted to meth, so he struggles with addiction. You meet her friends, her best friends, who are gay and pregnant, and who support her, and she ends up finding her voice through poetry.
So, Olivia, what drew you to writing fantasy and rather than contemporary, as in your other novels?
Yeah, for folks who don't know, my first two novels, Perfectly Paraben and All's Are on Fire, are contemporary novels set at ages 14. But I am a huge sci-fi and fantasy nerd. Like, I was that kid at age 12, like, reading Dune at school, and the teacher's like, should you be reading that? I'm like, shut up.
Yes.
So I love Dune, Tamara Pierce, like, Garth Nix, Sabriel, like, all of those stories were, like, my bread and butter. And I think Ender's Game was maybe the first sci-fi I read, so I always wanted to write a fantasy. This was the first book I ever wrote, but even though I had others published beforehand. So it's funny that I'm known for my contemporary works, whereas deep down I am, if there's a unicorn or a dragon on that cover, like, I'm reading it. So that's definitely why I decided to go with fantasy.
Yeah, a lot of people have an entry point and then go from there, but yes. Okay, and Isabel, what was your hope for Gabi when you wrote it initially? And how has the way you view the book changed over the last 10 years?
Well, initially, I think I was writing it to understand myself, because a lot of it is autobiographical, but it's not a autobiography, right? It's not a memoir, so I have to remind people of that still, right? Like, it's not Gabi is not me exactly, right? But is a lot of me, and my hopes were to publish, like, if I'm being honest, to publish a book and to say, like, I did it. Like, I published a book, and, like, my parents would buy it and my friends would buy it, but a lot more people than just my friends and parents bought it, so that was nice. But I really, the dedication is for young women, right? And the older I got, the more I realized that a lot of us were going through very similar situations when regards to body shaming and sexuality, and culturally, that we didn't get to talk about, that we had to be silent about, that we had to feel shame for. And yet we were all going through all these things alone, and I wanted the book to be a reminder to young people that they're not alone in these situations, right? In the book, if you haven't read it, spoiler alert, it's been 10 years, so I'm sorry. But if you haven't read it, in the book, Gabi's best friend, Cindy, is pregnant. Right, she becomes pregnant after being sexually assaulted, date rape as a teenager, and I've gotten a lot of comments from people like, oh, all of those things don't happen to teenagers in high school. That's just like too dramatic. It's too much drama. And it's like, no, those things happen, right? And so like I chose Cindy. I had this happen to her because I knew young women that this has happened to. And I knew these stories existed because they existed when I was a young person and happened to my friends and happened to people I knew. And I knew they existed because they happened to adults, friends that I met as adults, that these things had happened to. And so it makes, I'm glad that young people still really like it, but also in a way I'm kind of sad that they're still going through these same kinds of things.
Okay. Let's see. Olivia, where did you go for research or inspiration on the mythology and supernatural elements? And what were your favorite sources or mentor texts?
Yeah, in Twin Flames there are jinn, or genies as they're called in the Western world, and there were so many wonderful books, like The Jinni and the Golem, the S.A. Chakraborty City of Brass series, and then I just got to see Saba Tahir and be a total fangirl. And yeah, all of her books are just incredible sources for that kind of folklore. And yeah, and from my family, a lot of Islam unfortunately trickles down in my life, usually in funerals. That's when I feel like my family has like the most Muslim like celebrations and remembrances of life, and that's when the Quran is busted out, and the Quran is a lot of writing about jinn. So that was really wonderful just to be able to turn to like my family and my dad, and then like going online and be like, oh yeah, like Ahmadinejad was like, under his rule as a president in Iran, a bunch of ministers were put in jail because they tried to summon a jinn. Like, I'm not even kidding, and that's like very punishable in Iran. And I'm like, that is so interesting, like to this day. And then obviously in parts of Indonesia, Malaysia, there's different beliefs as well. So it was a very rich subject matter, but even then, half the people I named as mentor texts were Muslim. A lot of it is written by white authors, so it was really nice to be able to like actually dive deep into like my own culture and learn more for sure, and not just the stories I grew up hearing.
Thank you. Isabel, given that Gabi, we had to bring it up, Gabi has been a target of book bans since its debut. Can you speak to the value of a story like this for teenagers today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if we need to talk about it in this audience, right? Like you all know why these books are important, and what I have a little note. I went to a library in LA, and it was a smaller library. Was it the Vermont? Is it Vermont Library? I think it was the Vermont Library. And the librarian had saved a little note that the book had been checked out several times, and one of the readers left a note inside the book for the next reader that says something along the lines of, "This is a really good book. Like you need to read it. It will help you." Something like that. And even now, when I go and present to high schools or I talk to students, I will inevitably get teenagers who will tell me, "My dad isn't a drug addict, but he's an alcoholic," or "My uncle lives with us and he drinks a lot," or they will tell me their things. Young women will share their stories of sexual assault, and this is the first time they see themselves in books or their experiences validated, which is like, no, there's lots of books that they should be reading where their experiences are validated. But I think it's important to see ourselves, right? And we've been saying that for before I was born. I'm sure that librarians were saying, writers are saying we need to see ourselves in books. But it really makes a difference, especially the way that our country is going, to validate our existence. to validate the existence of our communities and people who may be somewhat different from us. And like maybe you grew up in a nice suburban home with 2 parents, and it was great, and you went to church on Sunday, and you had the big gatherings, family meals, but not all of us did. Some of us were afraid our dad was going to die on a daily basis. And so those experiences, I think all of them should be validated and seen as like real American experiences. Because these books are banned because they're not American, because they're promoting, I've been told I'm promoting promiscuity with my book, that because there's a queer character. If we don't have this kind of work on our shelves, then we are effectively erasing a lot of Americans' lives, if we want to put it that way. If we want to take out the Mexican out of the Mexican American, like you're erasing American lives consistently by not including these kinds of stories in your libraries. And for those of us who grew up loving books and using them as lifelines, then you're cutting a lot of lifelines for a lot of people. For me, as a young kid, as a child who had a very dysfunctional home, one of my lifelines was Judy Blume, Beverly Cleary, seeing that families existed in the world that sat down together and ate food, even if parents were having a hard time at work, right? And so for me, those books showed me how important it was to have that reality shown, right? Even though it wasn't my reality, I knew it was out there somewhere. And so book banning just makes me upset, right? Because most of these people, they don't read the books, right? They don't read the books. So they could care less about what we have to say and about the kids we're trying to speak to. And I feel like I'm rambling, but I could just go on. It just makes me upset, and it hurts also that someone would try to censor, and it makes writing difficult because as I'm writing books, I'm now questioning, well, should I put this in there? Will kids even get to read it? Will it even be put on the bookshelf, right? So it's a lot of things that I think about with book banning.
Yeah. That's okay. You can ramble. You're bringing up a lot of good points about who is an American and self-censoring and things like that, the fear that people have. So thank you for bringing all of that up. On a different note, I guess, for Olivia, why was it important, I guess this relates, for you to feature the whole Mazandarani family unit and some of those quieter domestic interpersonal scenes with the family, aside from the djinn and all of the fantasy elements as well?
Yeah, even though it's an action-adventure book, I really want to have these smaller moments because I feel like you can tell a lot about a family from just the way they're eating food together, or the way your family unpacks a bag of takeout, who does what. I think those kinds of things can tell you a lot more. Like I said, the family's Iranian Argentinian. The father is Iranian, the mother is Argentinian, and I also think that when you live in a mixed culture household, the domestic stuff is also very telling of just how that operates. Ironically, their father is very domestic. He loves pickling things. He loves cooking. He also fixes cars under the table for his job, in the back, in their detached garage. Whereas the girl's mother is a very go-get. She's knee-deep in academia. She loves her work. She loves her students. She loves her career. And so I liked turning that that dynamic on its head, and just kind of showing these daily household moments and I think maybe it's because I'm a new mom. I have a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old, and I feel like I am learning a lot from other people, going over to their house for play dates and stuff and seeing how other families operate. And I feel like it's you could tell me so much about your family, or you could just show me your Netflix history.
Yeah.
And so I think as a writer, I just wanted to show instead of tell in that way.
I'm curious if you pulled from your own family when you were writing some of those scenes.
That Christmas scene is straight out of our family. My mom is Argentinian, but for a lot of Argentinians, that means you're actually Italian. Since Argentina is 97% European, and there's the Feast of Seven Fishes, right? But they're like not gonna go all out for all seven. And then on the Iranian side, it's like, well, my father isn't Christian, but he will never turn down a party because he's Persian. And so we have all of the rice, all of the different like kebabs and meats and stuff, and then just like randomly fish soup and like a whole smoked salmon. So when the girls are having their big Christmas party, which is at Christmas Eve, by the way, you don't celebrate Christmas Day, it's Noche Buena, but yeah, I basically lifted that straight from my household, and now I'm really hungry because the food in that scene is really good.
Sounds so good. Isabel, so this kind of relates to some things we were talking about earlier. So you've spoken to young readers for 10 years about the book. You told us some of the responses you got, but has the way they've responded changed, or are there any really standout stories from about readers or that they've told you over the years that you remember?
Yeah, I don't see the responses kind of have stayed the same. They've stayed the same. I think in the responses that have surprised me, at the beginning especially, like I got on Twitter because writer Amy Spalding, young adult writer Amy Spalding, she like messaged me and she's like, you need to get on Twitter. Like I've been trying to message you, and I have to send you an email. Like what's that about? Like just right. And she, I think, was like my first reader email that was like, I really connect with this character, and like I thought I was writing for young Latina girls. But one of the things that have surprised me is that I've gotten like older white women, you know, in their older 50s or 60s saying like, my mom was like that. Like we couldn't talk about sex, like we couldn't talk about anything. We didn't know anything about our period. And I really connected with this character, and that was really weird for me at the beginning. Right now I'm like, well, of course, yeah, like we're all women, like we're screwed in some way in our cultures in different ways, right? And so so that's been something that was kind of surprising, and just I guess like seeing the same consistent response has been surprising, because like I said, like I wish things were so much different for young people, and that young people were listened to more and taken seriously more and respected more than they are. And I don't think we do that enough. And so, you know, we put a lot on their shoulders and really force them to be adults without them having any of the privileges of adults or any of the you know, abilities or autonomy that adults usually have.
Just one more question before we wrap up. What are you all thinking about next? Are there any things you're hoping to write or working on that you can share at the time? We'll go with Olivia first.
In January of 2025, I have my first picture book coming out. It's called La Intérprete, or The Interpreter. It's translated by David Bull, so it's coming out in English and Spanish simultaneously, and it follows a young girl who is the interpreter for her family. So I call this Boss Baby meets Severance, because she takes her job very seriously, but she's kind of like disassociating. And I'm sure a lot of y'all in this room had to interpret for their parents and like just explain what like a bake sale was and like, you know, an overnight trip. And so she is wearing like a suit and tie. She is juggling, you know, every time her parents need help, like a door opens and she walks through it into like the DMV or the tax office or the hair salon, and she's like ready to interpret, and her worlds basically start colliding. So she starts kind of jumbling everything together as she struggles to be a kid and have this very real adult responsibility. So that's my first picture book. And then in 2026 and 2027, I have my middle grade series called Rostam and the Red Dwarf. It is a retelling of the Shahnameh, or the Persian Book of Kings, set in space on an exoplanet within our galaxy, but it's still 40 light years away. So it's just really fun to take an ancient story and kind of like mess with it and add some oxygen bubbles and like space shuttles. So I'm the daughter of a pilot, and so it's always really fun to incorporate any like flying or spacecraft and stuff that I grew up with after going up in Cherokees and Cessnas until I would like nap in the back seat.
after school. So that's my fun little space opera for 2026 and 27, and that's with Simon and Schuster. And my picture book is with Kokila over at Pinkman.
Yeah, those all sound great. Like, I can't wait for the interpreter, because I saw that, like, when you were talking about it, like, it brought me back to, like, when I was little, translating for my parents, and, like, the stress of, like, you got to get it right. And, like, 8 years old, translating at the doctor, like, I don't.
Dude,
That is so stressful, so stressful. But you should read Twin Flames. I'm in the middle of reading it right now, and it's really good. I just had a book come out with Kokila in March, Mama's Panza, and then I have a trilogy that I've been working on and probably talking about for too long that should be coming out as soon as I finish it. But that's Martinez Paranormal Services, and that is about a young girl, Penelope Martinez, and her parents are paranormal researchers, and she really wants to go ghost hunting with them. And her parents finally take her, but things go really bad. And so they're like, you can't come with us anymore. But she really wants to prove to them that she can, and she's ready. So her and her friends decide that they're going to go on their own to search for ghosts. But what they end up finding is a vampire witch. And in many cultures, there are different kinds. In Mexico, sometimes we just call bruja, tlahuelpuchi, aswang in the Philippines, right? And so this is what they find. And so it's a little bit more than they bargained for, but they feel like they can handle it on their own. And so that's their story, and it's a trilogy. And the basis of that is really stories that our grandparents and my tias and my mom told me growing up. That's the basis of that series, is just the stories that I grew up with, like all the horror stories of ghosts and witches and dead priests. So it's gonna be great, I hope. I'm
Yes,
very
I'm so
excited.
excited.
I'm very
Sounds
excited.
amazing.
And then I have a young adult novel, Golden State, which is about a young woman who has just graduated from high school, and she finds out her dad has another family, and she has another brother that she hasn't met. And so she and her friend, who has just been released from prison, go on a road trip through California to meet her brother.
Okay, thank you so much. They all sound so great. Can't wait. But with that, our Book Buzz, the Lee and Low 2024 Fall Book Buzz, comes to a close. And a huge thank you to Olivia Abtahi and Isabel Quintero. And thank you all for being in the audience. Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're so grateful to all that you do to connect young people with books and for taking the time from your schedules for this. Be sure to come by booth 1740 to browse all of our Lee and Low books. And Olivia and Isabel will both be signing these two titles today. So Olivia's at 2 p.m. and Isabel is at 3 p.m. So we hope to see you there. Thanks and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.